Hello and welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are having a fantastic 2025, and today's video I'm going to be going over some things to look out for in the upcoming Formula 1 season here in 2025. Now this year is going to be very important with important things like Hamilton at Ferrari, Sainz at Williams, a title fight, and just like new drivers in new teams. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens. And in today's video, I'm just going to go through some things to look out for in the upcoming Formula 1 season. Now, before we get started, I want you to like and subscribe, and let us get into the 5 things I want to talk about in this video. So the first thing to look out for in this season is Ferrari. Now, Ferrari, I think, have the best driver pairing in this season and maybe even in a while, because what they have is insane. They have Lewis Hamilton, a multiple world champion, and they have Charles Leclerc, probably one of the fastest drivers over a single lap in Formula 1 history. So it won't be a huge surprise for people to really be betting on Ferrari for this season. And I don't blame them. I am also one of those people who think Ferrari is going to do very well, especially this season, with this amazing driver pairing. Now, another reason why I'm saying Ferrari might be one to look out for is, of course, the potential car. Now, Ferrari had a really good momentum at the end of the year. They had a pretty iffy middle part of the season, a great start to the season, and then they gained most of the momentum back from after a poor middle part of the season to get a really strong ending to the season. Now, going into this year, with Hamilton coming over to Maranello and with Leclerc, I think they'll be having some very good advice, especially from Hamilton, and from like a driver like him. They could easily develop the car like in his way, and just from the advice that he has given to them. So I think Ferrari has a lot of wisdom and knowledge just from that driver pairing, and I think they're also going to be very good, especially at the start maybe, because last year, 2024, they had a really good start to the season. So, and it was the same with 2023 and kind of 2022. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with Ferrari. It could go well, but it might not go well. So we'll see. And I'm really curious about how the driver pairing itself and the inter-team battle is going to work too. Because with Hamilton coming over, I think Leclerc is going to have quite some competition, and Hamilton is definitely going to have some competition with Leclerc. It'd be interesting to see how the two work together, and if we maybe see a potential rivalry break out. We saw with Hamilton and Rosberg, and maybe Hamilton and Russell if it maybe stayed on for a few more years, but I think this will be really interesting to see. Whether they get along or not, we'll have to find out, but that Ferrari is going to definitely be one to look out for in this upcoming Formula 1 season. The next thing I want to talk about, and another thing that you should be looking out for, is, of course, the rookies. The rookies, there are a lot of rookies heading into 2025, and it's going to be really interesting to see what they can do and how they do. Fared up against their teammates and their own teams. Now, some of the rookies that are here are Oliver Bearman, who did a few races last year. We have Isaac Hadjar, Gabriel Bortoleto, and Kimi Antonelli. And those are just some of the rookies that we have this year. And we also have Lawson, who's not really a rookie, but he is stepping up to Red Bull next year. Now, I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to be really cool to see those drivers, and they're not normal rookies too. Some of them are like really elite, especially like Antonelli, who's only like 18 or something, and he has managed, 18 or 17, and he has managed to climb his way all the way up the ranks and into Formula 1 at an absolutely rapid speed. We have Oliver Bearman, who has proved himself in the Ferrari car in Saudi Arabia during that super sub. So I think these rookies have a lot of potential. Colapinto was another one of them, but unfortunately he's not on the grid this year. He could be on the grid potentially replacing Jack Doohan, who's also a rookie, and he had done the season finale last year. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there. But I think the rookies are this year especially are on a whole nother level compared to what we've seen before. Now, another thing I want to point out is what the rookies are going to be going up against. Now, they're going to be going up against things like pressure and like the urge that they need to be doing really well, especially because some of them, like Antonelli, have been put into really high pecking order teams. So I think for them to be able to perform well is like a huge thing for them. Another thing is that their teammates. Now, it'd be interesting to see how much they'll have learned come like the end of season, how much they've learned from their teammates. Now, most of these teams that have all these rookies also have an experienced driver paired with them. So I'll give you an example. For example, at Sauber, we have Gabriel Bortoleto, who's a very fast rookie, and alongside him, we have Nico Hulkenberg, who is one of the most experienced guys on the grid, especially in the midfield too. So that's one. Another one is we got Mercedes. We have Kimi Antonelli, who is stepping up to this year, taking Hamilton's seat, and alongside him, we have George Russell. And Russell is a very consistent, fast driver, so I think he's a very good driver to be able to learn from. So I think Antonelli, it'll be interesting to see what he can do and what these other guys can do. Hadjar will have Sonoda to see for himself. We also have other drivers like Lawson, who not really a rookie, but he can learn a lot, especially from Max Verstappen, who is your teammate and probably the fastest guy in F1 currently at the moment. So there's a lot for these rookies to be able to learn and know, and it's just going to be really interesting to see. Now, going into this season, we're also going to witness something special. Now, a lot of people have pointed out that we have the youngest driver on the grid in F1 currently, which is Kimi Antonelli, and we have the oldest driver, which is Fernando Alonso, and we have the present champion and elite driver of Max Verstappen. So, like how many people have pointed out, this is going to be something special and a very cool thing to be able to see. We see the future, the past, and the present all combined together onto the grid to maybe produce one of the most unique and insane seasons we might see. So this is another thing to be able to look out for, and that is that for the second thing. The rookies are something to be looking out for. The third thing to look out for in this Formula One season is the title fight. Now, what made 2024 a great season was the title fight. It was between McLaren, Red Bull, and sometimes even Ferrari and Mercedes. It just had that unpredictability each race and each weekend. It was just a really fun thing and an amazing thing to see when it comes to the racing and the battles. And it was just really interesting to watch. So I hope that kind of carries on into 2025. I think we could be seeing a very similar thing because we have Ferrari, Red Bull, McLaren, and maybe Mercedes. We'll have to see about that one. Aston, I don't know about Aston, but who knows? They could make an insane comeback. But for the time being, it's easily maybe a 3 or 4-way championship like from the start. So maybe we'll see, but it's gonna be really cool, and I hope this happens because having this title fight is what I think makes a season even better and like amazing. Because last year, if Verstappen had been winning, everyone would be just saying that this season was just really boring and just terrible. But because we had the title fight with McLaren absolutely dominating and even taking the Constructors' Championship, that's what made 2024 way more better than what we had the previous year in 2023. So I'm hoping that happens again. And what's going to be interesting is how each team does, because there are some obstacles that teams have to go over. So I'll give you an example. For example, Mercedes. They have Russell, who is, I think, capable of being an amazing team leader. And then we have Antonelli, who we don't know how he's gonna perform yet, and especially in a top team, with the rookie too, it's gonna be interesting to see how they fare and how they do, especially if they have a fast car and then if they're in like in a title fight. Then it'll be interesting to see what will happen. Red Bull have Lawson, who is stepping up and is going to be under a lot of pressure, especially to be able to go up against Max Verstappen, who has absolutely defeated and crushed his teammates each year. So it'll be interesting to see what Lawson can do. Ferrari have Hamilton and Leclerc, which are definitely favorites, of course, going into this season. And then we have McLaren, who they're the only team that actually have kept, like the top team that have kept their current driver lineup from last year. So, like in the top teams. So it's gonna be super interesting. McLaren, I think, will have a very consistent, and they already know how their driver pairing works. So I think they don't have as many obstacles as the other teams, which might give McLaren a good advantage, but we'll see. So those top teams, and especially if it's going to be a similar situation to last year in 2024, it is going to be very cool, especially with the rookie like Antonelli and maybe even Lawson fighting for wins and like going up against Hamilton in a Ferrari or Max Verstappen. And if Aston can also make a good car, we could even see Fernando Alonso jump into the fight, which will be just absolutely epic and crazy. So I'm hoping that kind of happens, but we'll have to see. So that is another thing to be looking out for in this upcoming Formula One season. The fourth thing to look out for in this upcoming Formula One season is Sainz and Williams. Now, to give you some context, at the beginning of last year, we of course knew that Hamilton was going to be replacing Carlos Sainz. Now, Sainz, it was a huge shame because Sainz was doing very well at Ferrari. He had a few consistent years with them, had bagged a few wins, and well, for him to get axed just like that was not very unfortunate for him. This year, I think, has been his best season in Formula One to date. He has been very consistent. He scored many wins, I think around 2. So, and those performances were really good. So, for him to be leaving and to be now going all the way down the order, I don't think he really deserves that. But it's just unfortunate, and it's just been the situation he has been played with. Now, in terms of him and his new team, so we knew that Sainz was looking to move somewhere. He was maybe going to Red Bull, but then they didn't want him there, so it was between Audi or Williams. He ended up going with Williams, which I thought he was going with Audi, but he went with Williams. So now it's just going to be interesting to see how he and Williams get along and how they do in this upcoming Formula One season. Williams as a whole, last season was okay for them. Not as good, I think, as 2023. Going into this year, they've been sounding very confident with their car, and I don't know if it will be good or not, but it will be interesting to see what they can do. I wonder if we can maybe even see a comeback for Williams, which I think Sainz is also hoping. And from maybe what he's seen, maybe that's the reason why he's signed with Williams, is because it is looking good and is on a very upward trajectory. But I think overall for Williams, I think this is a great deal to get Carlos Sainz in, because now they have, I think, a great pairing with Albon and Sainz. Definitely one of the best pairings for this season. Those two are very consistent drivers and they bring in a lot of points. Albon especially, he scores a lot with that Williams, and Sainz, we know what he can do, so I think those two combined together is going to make an amazing team at Williams. In terms of what I think about the inter-team battle, so Albon, of course, last year when Franco Colapinto joined, he is kind of been, I think, facing a bit of pressure because Colapinto was sometimes outperforming him, and he was just a rookie, and it was only his first few races. So Albon was, I think, kind of feeling a bit of the pressure and was making a little bit more mistakes than usual. So I think it'd be interesting to see what happens with him when Sainz comes in, because Albon's always been the team leader, and he's always outperformed all of his teammates. But now, with Sainz coming in, and he's a very quick driver, it will be interesting to see what will happen to Albon and what he can do with Sainz now in the team. And if he underperforms, we could be maybe seeing him out, and who knows what can happen. So that will be something to look out for in this upcoming Formula One season. So the last thing I want to talk about, and the last thing I think you should be looking out for in this Formula One season, is Red Bull. Now, last year, well, not even last year, before last year, Red Bull were very comfortable. They had maybe the fastest driver currently, which is Max Verstappen, and they had Perez, which is a very solid team. And they were consistently at the top and consistently dominating, being the fastest car and with the fastest driver. It was all they could have wanted. And well, last year, Verstappen had a great start to the season. He had already bagged 2 wins, and it was looking like we were in for another Verstappen domination year. However, that was not the case, because after that, especially after Miami, we saw Red Bull not becoming dominant again. After what's been almost 2 years of Red Bull dominance, Red Bull weren't dominant at all. They became the second fastest car behind McLaren, and on some days they were even slower than Mercedes and Ferrari. So it was a huge shock, and it was a surprising thing. And I think part of those was, of course, the inside Red Bull. There were a lot of issues going on with the Horner controversy and with Newey leaving and like other people, important people leaving. So it was really important. And then they just couldn't get on top of their car, which was another huge surprise, because usually Red Bull were able to get on top of their car, but this time around they weren't. So they had lost out to McLaren, and if they had maybe had a poor start to last year, they easily, I think Verstappen could have easily lost the title to Lando Norris or maybe even Oscar Piastri. So going into this year, it's going to be interesting how Red Bull try to bounce back. Verstappen, I think, will be strong as ever going into this year. I think he'll be motivated to get his 5th title, on the hunt for the 5th title. He's already a 4-time world champion, so just that on that alone, I think Verstappen last year, of course, proved to be why he is a champion, and he had some absolutely insane drives, such as the Brazil drive. So what Verstappen can do, I don't think is to be doubted or questioned. Lawson is going to be interesting. So Liam Lawson is going to be stepping up after, of course, Perez got axed for getting 8th in the driver's standings in a Red Bull, which should have been at least up in 4th or 3rd or something. So for Perez to get axed, and then we had Liam Lawson, which is a surprise. Not Tsunoda, which I find surprising, but it will be interesting to see what Lawson can do. I think Lawson's a very quick and fast driver, so it will be just about whether he can handle the pressure. That's another thing, because Red Bull and Verstappen especially, he has been able to dominate and easily beat his teammates in the past. And we saw people like Perez, who is an amazing driver in the midfield, get absolutely crushed by Verstappen in 2024 and maybe even the year before that in 2023. So it just shows that great drivers can potentially lose out, especially if they go to Red Bull and all, because Red Bull, with Verstappen especially at that team, it's going to be very difficult, and there's going to be a lot of pressure. So for Lawson to be able to step up, it will be interesting. And as a rookie too, it's going to be very hard for him. So I'm very curious to see how he does at Red Bull. And that is pretty much all the things to look out for. So there you have it. Those are all the things that I think you should be looking out for in this upcoming Formula One season. We have Ferrari, the rookies, the title fight, Sainz and Williams, and Red Bull. I think all in all, it's going to produce a fantastic season, hopefully. So it's going to be a very unique season, and with what we've seen so far with the new drivers and teams, it is maybe going to be a potential banger if we get lucky, of course. Now, thank you so much for watching. If you watched all the way to this point, I thank you so much. And please like and subscribe. It will help me a lot to make upcoming more videos. And peace.